Hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host and friend in the Christian music industry, Wisdom Moon. And today I'm really excited to have Shaylee with us. Welcome, Shaylee.
Hi. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but my first memory of us meeting was years ago when I was working at Integrity Music. I was heading up this website and resource online that we had called We Are Worship, and we had this new feature on the website called Song Share, where people can basically write their own songs, upload it, and stuff like that. So I was like, well, it'd be cool to host a songwriting one day retreat,
Yeah.
and so we hosted it out there in Nashville, and it was mainly, local worship songwriters. And that's how I first met you, I believe, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So that was really cool because, a lot of the people that came I had never met before, and just how in a day, you guys, we did some worship and
hmm
sharing the word and stuff and encouraging people. And then you guys were able to write with each other and get to know each other and build relationships. And then I don't think we even really talked for a while, like for a few years or something.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got reconnected. So it's been
hmm
really fun, just to reconnect. And then
Yeah.
now you're actually one of our artists at Lula Street Records, which is really exciting. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Full circle moment there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, so I moved to Nashville about 10 years ago, right out of college, and literally had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I just liked music. So that was pretty much the best idea I had. I knew one person here and moved in with her and was like, well, let's just see how this goes. I just knew I wanted to work in music. I was like, I don't know what that looks like, but and
Mm,
then, once you get here, you realize there's so many things you can do in that world. There's so many avenues and jobs and things you can do
yeah,
that isn't just I would like to be Taylor Swift and that is my goal. You know, which is
yeah.
always what everyone thinks when someone moves to Nashville. They're like, "Oh, that's so great for you. You want to be Taylor," and you're like, I mean, I wouldn't be mad, but that's not my one goal. Okay. But yeah, so it's been a long, fun, interesting journey. I started out doing more of the singer-songwriter stuff, and
Mm,
I literally never even heard of co-writing when I moved here. And that was the weirdest concept for me.
mm.
Was I remember sitting in a room with someone and I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to talk to them? Is it like this is such a private process for me, and then I'm with a stranger. It did not go well. So just was not great. But then I ended up really falling in love with that, and so I think through that singer songwriter world, I really got um, I love pop music and started writing more of that. And but I think I figured out pretty quickly that I didn't really want to be a pop artist. I think that whole world and lifestyle just didn't fit what I wanted to do. I'm kind of more of a
Mm.
homebody, or more of just I think that life of I did the touring thing for a little bit, and I was like,
Mm.
well, it's really intense.
Yeah.
And it was fun, but I think I fell in love more with the songwriting aspect, and then
Mm.
and it was only really, I mean, I guess now it's been a couple years, but God really just shifted my focus. It was all within a month. It just a lot of really cool things happened in a row to where I feel like he was very clearly leading me towards worship and towards writing that. I always stayed away from it, not because I didn't like it. I think I was intimidated by it, and
Yeah.
it was I don't know, to write songs for then God's people to sing to him. I was just like,
Yeah.
that's so heavy, and I was like, I will just go ahead and stay away from that. Um, but then, I mean, it's a whole it's hard to remember all the little things that happened, but even from me praying one night, God, do you want me to do this? Is this what you want from me? I don't know. I want to make sure that I'm genuine in pursuing this. And that next morning I got a random email from, I don't know if you know Carl Carty. Do you know him?
Oh yeah.
Okay. just one of just an amazing mentor and friend now, but I didn't know him at all. I led like BGVs with him one time at church years ago, and he randomly reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm starting this worship, like a mentorship program at the church, and I thought of you, and do you want to do it?" And it was like hours after I prayed to be like, "Do you want me to do
Oh
worship?"
wow.
And then someone at Lou was like, "Would you like to do this program to learn how to be a worship leader?" And I was like, "Okay." Like, all right, I guess that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Um, which is great. And that year was amazing. And he is an incredible teacher and mentor, and really just helped shape my walk in that area just so much, and really fell in love with it. And love, I mean, because, it feels like every time you're writing a song with other believers, it's just this, it's literally a time of worship and ministry and connection and like with the Spirit. And it just felt, I was like, wait, I can do this for like a quote unquote job. I get to just meet with God and believers and like create music. And then I was like, is this real? Like, it was amazing and
Yeah.
eye opening. And so yeah, that's been a couple years now, and I've started kind of recording and releasing songs throughout that, but mostly just leading at my local church and trying to pray through, what this journey looks like, and trying to hold it, loosely. And just, that's been, which I'm sure we'll get into later, the whole thing of wanting to hold things loosely, to be like, all right, is this what you want from me? Is this like what I'm supposed to be doing? Or is this me pursuing something selfishly? And that's the constant spiral that I get in. But,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's been a great, really cool journey. And yeah, and then met you guys. And that was also a very, like, a cool affirming step, I think, in that journey of me, again, being in a season of like, all right, God, are you sure like this is what you want me to do? And want to make sure, I'm just checking again. This is what you want.
Yeah.
And then hearing from y'all. And I feel like it's just been cool, little things he's put, when I start doubting and when I start getting in my head, I feel like he'll give me something to be like, this is what I want you to do.
Yeah.
And um, so it's been really cool.
That's awesome, man. So you went from like literally just writing by yourself, you didn't even know co-writing was a thing, to
Yeah.
now like you co-write quite a bit, right? Would you
Yes.
say you mostly co-write now?
Yeah. Which is funny because I actually thought about that this year. I was like, I should like rediscipline myself to write by myself. Because I was like, I just don't do that as much anymore. Besides, like, starts, you'll start like,
Mm,
get a little line or a chorus or something. But then I'm always like, I'll bring this to so and so. And then I'm
yeah.
like, wait. So I want to kind of get back into it, because now I feel like it's shifted completely to just co-writing. But
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think it's so helpful in the worship world, though, because there's obviously the creative back and forth, but there's accountability, and there's like, checking scripture and theology, and just having another like voice in that song and in that world, I think is helpful, at least to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I'll write something, I'm like, that sounds cool, but like, is that true?
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, to even be able to be in this like training, mentoring program with Carl, that sounds phenomenal. And then like
It's
putting
amazing.
out your own music, that's got to be some like in the beginning, I'm sure like it was kind of daunting to even think about releasing your own stuff. So, how did you go about, I guess, starting to release your own music and overcoming this like maybe fear of like, well, what if people don't like it, or is this even good,
Yeah.
and who do I even work with, like how do you even process all of that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And my story that was another like weird step, meaning I feel like God making something really obvious to me, because it ended up being a worship leader in the church I was at named Luke Brown. And we had led a couple times, but he kind of approached me again, right in like the middle of this residency, right in the middle of me being like, okay, well then what do I do now? And what steps should I take? And,
Mm,
and he just approached me and was like, hey, I would really like to produce some songs for you. And I was just like, what? Like, and which was amazing, because again, I had no idea who to even go to and what, like, where to start. And then God just like placed someone from the local church in my life, and he was also a great mentor. And so he produced my first song, which we wrote together with Ethan Holst, called Dearly Loved. And that was just also super organic, kind of genuine moment where we just all sat down, wrote the song, ended up really loving it. And then we sang like a demo that day. And then that ended up being the vocal we used, and like
Oh, wow.
the song and everything. Cause it just kind of flowed out of that genuine moment. And that was one of the first, it was, one of the first worship songs I had written. And again, was just a very affirming moment. But, so it's hard to speak on like how to go about choosing and like stepping into that, because I feel like God literally just was like plop, like placed him like in my life. And I was like, great. And he also was very helpful. He was helpful in like the place I was financially, and like all of that was very just generous and giving, and just wanted, because he just wanted to help my ministry. He was just like, I believe in what you're doing and I want to come alongside you. And I mean, that's a huge thing. I feel like God,
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing about the church and like being involved in a church and the body of believers. And like,
Mm,
because I feel like God will put people in your life that will want to support your ministry, and not, not, it's not competition, and it's not like, it's more, how can I help you and how can we help each other, because we both have the same mission. We both want to like be writing songs for God's glory and to
yeah.
worship him. And so that's not, I mean, not that you were asking my advice, but I feel like it would be to, I mean, just to be looking for who God has placed in your life and the relationships that you have. And,
Yeah.
being open to, I guess, who God's already put there. And that just at least that was more affirming and felt more natural to me, because I'm not a great networker,
Mm,
you know, and I feel like there's a lot of value and importance in that area, which I've definitely learned over the last few years. But I think, um, I don't know, you could probably speak on this obviously more, because I feel like that's more, I mean, that's your area. You're an expert at all of that. And I've always struggled with knowing the balance and the difference in especially the Christian industry of networking and just trying to create genuine relationships and like helping each other's ministries. Does that make
yeah.
sense? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think what you touched on, just seeing, I guess, how God's moving and the
mm-hmm,
people that God's placing in your life, and just being open-handed about your songs and your music, and go, okay, this seems to be what the door is that God's opening, and just walking into
mm-hmm.
that. So I think it's a lot of times it's the small yeses, that add up to the big yes.
Right.
And sometimes like we can really get in our own way of
Definitely.
saying the yes, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think also I've worked with, a lot of artists, and a lot of artists tend to like overthink everything too, and
Yep.
and then you
Sounds about
just,
right.
yeah, get paralyzed and like, oh, what if this is the wrong, decision and all of this. And I'm a firm believer that if you're making decisions with the heart of like, I'm wanting to please God, I'm wanting to obey God in this, then
Mm-hmm.
God's gonna honor that, versus like if you're like, I don't really care, God, what you think, I'm just gonna do what I want,
Right. Yep. Which is kind of like, sometimes it's not even that obvious. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
but you can have that attitude of like, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna do what I want. And it doesn't feel as like blatant as that, but you're
Yeah.
actually doing that?
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard, at least for me, to like, I struggle with that balance of, like you said, being open handed and just kind of being like, all right, God, you're going to open the doors if they're supposed to open. And you're going to
Yeah.
put people in my life, and you are going to like make the way, obviously. But then
Hmm.
also, I need to be, a good steward of my gifts and be disciplined and work hard, So I feel like that's a hard balance, at
Yeah.
least for me, because sometimes I'll find myself swinging hard to the work hard, and I'm just like hustling and like,
Hmm.
for a release, I'm just like, oh, I'm doing the market, I'm doing all this stuff. And it's like, and then I'll, my head will come above the water, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even like sought what like the Lord in this process, and I feel very overwhelmed and like I'm all
Yeah.
business minded, and that's not good. And then I'll swing to the other side of, well, I'm just going to lay back and do nothing because if God wants it to happen, it'll happen, you know?
Yeah.
So it's hard to find the middle sometimes in that for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And one thing that I've definitely noticed about your music is one, it's like really high quality, like what you've put out. The
Thanks.
songwriting is really high quality, the production is really high quality, so it stands out. And your style is also pretty unique, and like it's very like a lot of your music is very worshipful, but it's not like a typical kind of like Chris Tomlin, worship
Hmm.
songs. So yeah, I love like how refreshing just like your style is, and how you could take truth and then, with your writers that you're working on with these songs, like you're presenting it in like a new, fresh way. But obviously, it's like the unchanging truth of God.
Hmm.
So I think it's really resonating with people, and I know like you've gotten a lot of streams. I don't even know like you probably can't even like keep track of all the like numbers of streams. It's like in the millions. Uh, so it's been really cool to see that, especially from somebody that just kind of like started out as a worship leader trying to figure out, the life in Nashville
Hmm.
and what God's wanting to do with your life. So, what's maybe like some lessons that you've learned along the way of like as an independent artist, songwriter, what are things that you've learned that maybe like others can learn from so that they can avoid some pitfalls?
Oh man, pitfalls. um, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a lesson, if not just something that I feel like I'm constantly wrestling with is kind of like what we touched on of how to balance being open-handed and trying to be obedient, um, and then also being disciplined and pursuing things. I feel like um, in seasons I get in my own head, like you mentioned. That has been a big thing. When you said that, I was like, I resonate really deeply with that because I tend to I'll just spin out and then I'll think of like future scenarios that don't exist at
Mm,
all. But I mostly
yeah.
question like my own motives, and I'll be like,
Mm,
okay, because it's this. I was just talking to a friend the other day about this because we were doing this, like we were in a choir for a recording, and it was so cool in the studio. It was awesome, and there's great lighting, and we were like, oh, this is so cool, and like, and then we were also like, oh wait, yeah, we're worshiping, like this is a worship event,
mm,
and so it was like, man, how hard is it to like the point of you writing worship music and being a worship leader is to point people to God and to lead them in worship and to help them connect with Him. And yet, when you become a quote unquote worship artist, it is about you a little bit, and you're promoting yourself
mm.
as an artist. And it is such a hard balance to me to be like, okay, I want to make sure I'm not making this too much about me, but I also like I'm about to go do this photo shoot anyways. And then, it's like, not that those things are bad, but it's just, at least that was a struggle for me going from secular music where it was like, it is all about me. And that wasn't really, it just is what it was. And then,
Yeah.
or it was, I don't know if that makes sense. But, and then with worship, it's like, okay, how do you balance being an artist, but also you're supposed to just be pointing to something else and someone else. And I think I don't know if I have a specific advice, but just I think not getting too much in your head, but always kind of doing a heart check along the way. Like I feel like I have to do a heart check even before I walk out on stage to lead worship, because I'll still get those kind of like, those butterfly feelings where I'm nervous about performing and messing up and singing the right notes and singing the right
Mm,
words. And then I have to be like, okay, that actually doesn't matter in the long run. And why am I doing this? And am I going to be able to worship in this moment? And am I going to be able to connect with God's people? And they're not
yeah.
here to like listen to me sing. So refocus, and the discipline, I
Yeah.
think, of having to shift my focus from that secular performance world into the worship world has been, it's hard. And I think, I don't know if there's ever going to be a day where I just don't think about it anymore. I kind of, that's what my friend and I were talking about. We're like, we kind of hope we never do. We kind of hope there's always
Yeah.
that heart check of stopping and being like, all right, am I making this too much about me? Um, just check in really quick. And then
Yeah.
whether it's you need to like repent or just ask God for help. I think a lot of times I'm just like, help make this about you. I think I'm really self-focused right now, or I'm struggling or whatever. And and I think, and he wants to meet us in that place. He already knows what we're feeling and thinking. It's not like it's a surprise to him, obviously, to be
Yeah.
like, hey, I think I'm thinking about myself more right now, but that to me has been the biggest inner battle as a worship artist, is trying to balance that. And I think it's about checking in with yourself before these moments, whether it's leading worship or recording or releasing music, just making sure you can kind of check in. And then I think accountability is good too, and having like a community of like some women in my life that are worship leaders that are just some of the most genuine scripture filled women
Mm.
that I can always go to. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just call them and be like, I'm freaking out. Why am I doing this? Am I making this about myself? And they can kind of like talk me off the ledge, or if like we're leading together, we can pray together before. And like that, I just feel like God obviously made us to live in community, and he made worship leaders to live in community. We see it looks like this very elevated, like this is a lone person being a worship leader. And in reality, you have access to this whole band and the people around you and friends and writers in this community. And like, we need each other to help, like, you know, to help balance, to help ground ourselves, and to not let what I feel like sadly a lot of has happened in the worship world, or even in just the pastor world, or just this Christian celebrity world, because that phrase is such an oxymoron. But like,
Yeah.
it's when it gets ahead of us and it's like too much about the person, then usually, you know, it usually crumbles in some way.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, an
Yeah.
isolated life doesn't work, I guess. I don't know if that answered your question,
Yeah.
but I certainly said
Oh
words.
yeah. No, I feel like this is a topic I could talk about for hours because I really think about just the current state of Christianity, especially in the Western
Mm,
culture of Christian celebrities and music. There is a lot of that, and it is a
mm-hmm,
tough thing to navigate because one, like if you want to impact a lot of lives and influence a lot of lives, you
mm-hmm.
have to be known. Like as an
Right.
artist, your songs have to be known, but then you're also like, okay, but I have to point to Jesus and all of this,
Yeah. Which again feels like opposing ideas.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily, it's just there's like a tension there. And
Hmm.
because you can
Yeah,
see, I mean,
for sure.
from like, I guess, a far away perspective, when I look at some of the like big celebrities and names, there's some that I'm like, can look up to and be like, you're doing this well, you're stewarding this well,
Hmm.
and there's some that it's like, oh no, but it's hard. I think you're right. And
Hmm.
Christians are under such a, they've always been, but I feel like especially right now we're under such a microscope, and we're like, it's so easy to villainize and scrutinize whatever Christians are doing. So I think, especially when you're very vocal and outwardly, expressing your faith and your platform, and when your whole job, oops, sorry if you hear that motorcycle, but when your whole job is, you know, about it, then it's like, okay, people are now, they're really looking at you and they're kind of looking for you to mess up, and which is a lot of pressure, you know, and yeah, it's an
Yeah,
interesting culture right now.
yeah. And sometimes, yeah, like the religious people tend to be the ones that are hoping that Christians mess up. Like,
Right.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's like within the Christian community, we're actually, yeah, it's just looking for that opportunity to just say, "Hey, I knew it," you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think about this all the time because of like the world I live in every day
Yeah.
in the industry and also like being in ministry. So
Oh, yeah.
um, yeah, I'd love to shift gears and talk about the whole world of sync and sync as in SYNC synchronization and sync licensing. I'm sure like a lot of people listening, it's kind of a new world for them. It probably is more of a foreign concept because I would say there are a ton of independent Christian artists that have really like tapped into the sync world of like film, TV, ads and things like that.
Hmm.
But you're somebody that's been in it for a while, and you've been able to, generate probably some like significant revenue from it, to be able to maybe even like support your, artist projects and things like that. So yeah, I would love to hear you share about your journey in the sync world and what you've seen success with and how you've figured some things out in it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it stemmed from the beginnings of my journey of doing singer songwriter and more pop things. And then when I figured out I didn't want to pursue that as an artist, but I still loved creating it, sync was kind of an avenue I found that I was like, oh, so I could still make pop music and create and do this and record it, which I love doing, but not have to, pursue it as an artist. And um, the, I kind of, my feet, or I got in the door, I guess, through Music Bed, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. They started out, they were a small company. They're actually from Texas, which is where I'm from.
Mm.
Um, and I forget, I want to say they reached out to me or we got connected in some way when they were just starting out. And they have been like a huge help, and they've gotten a lot, they've grown so much now to where they do a lot of micro licensing. So, the difference of the bigger syncs and placements on like TV shows and movies and big commercials and things like that, which Music Bed does do now as well. But they do the micro licensing, which is like anything from wedding videographers using music to like, YouTube advertising to like any kind of videos online or like small stuff like that. And that's like I kind of tapped into the wedding video world a lot because I also happen
Oh,
to
wow.
be a wedding videographer, like an editor back in the day. And so I kind of knew what videographers were looking for music wise, to fit, a video, and started writing songs for that vein. And yeah, it was more of like the consistent small licenses are what end up being great just revenue wise, because it's not that you have to sit and wait for, because those massive placements, even for like really veterans, are like a couple a year. I mean, they pay really well, obviously,
Yeah.
and they're nice, but those are hard. There's just more competition for those. And so with the micro licensing, it's like you're just getting constant, like it's just constant small revenue that builds up. And monthly, you're like, oh, it's like I almost got a bigger license, but it was actually really just like 50 small ones, And
Yeah.
Music Bed also does like a subscription service and stuff too, where people can sign up and do that, and that makes it more of a consistent payment as well. And
Mm.
so yeah, that's kind of how I got in. And then I work a little bit with Lyric House, and then it was just also me meeting different producers and writers that were with other sync companies, and we would write, and I would kind of do vocals for them for these songs, and then their companies would be pitching them, and so you get like a cut of that. So I kind of just, it was really that I just had my I mean, I was going to say, I have my feelers in a bunch of different areas, like a bunch of different small
Mm.
avenues, and which ended up creating a consistent revenue. But that just took,
Yeah.
a few, working with Music Bed and Lyric House was helpful. And then just a couple of years of writing and meeting different producers and people that were um, in that world. But It's been great because I feel like it's a great outlet and it allows me not to get burnt out in either area. Like, because worship, when you write worship, it's so heavy it's, and sometimes you can be like, oh, wow, okay, that was a lot and I need a breather. And so I can go over here and write this song in 2 hours about love, like,
Yeah.
but it's cutesy and they don't specifically want you to get really like intensely deep on the lyrics and they want it to be accessible and like they want it to be very, the umbrella to be large so where it can fit a lot of
Yeah.
different scenarios and very like simple and I also feel like if I was doing only that, then my like, you know, 4 Enneagram heart would be hurting because I'd be like, well, I want to write something deeper and more genuine. I can't just write songs about sunshine and love and be fine, But the fact that I could get to do both, I think, helps me not get burnt out in either area, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That totally makes sense. So would you say, you know, in today's day and age, that you can do music as a, pretty much like an independent artist, but like basically be able to generate like a full-time income? Is that something that's realistic for independent artists these days?
I think so. I mean, from my journey, I mean, it took me not the full decade of being here, but a good amount into me being here to kind of get to that place where now it's like my music totally funds itself. Um, and that's a mixture of sync and, leading worship at my local church and then streams, which, and so it kind of like, it's like a multiple, areas coming together to where I'm like, yeah, I could like now at this point survive off of music, which is my goal of moving here. I was like, I want to be able to work and make a living off of music and whatever that looks like. And so it's definitely, I mean, there's so many avenues. And now I feel like even more. I feel like the industry is changing with all the online, like all that stuff with licensing. It's a lot easier to join one of those micro licensing, programs and to get into that. There's also things, I forget what it's called, maybe but there's a whole website where you can sign up and you write songs for individual people. Like they hire you to write a song for them. Have you heard about
Oh yeah.
this? Yeah, which
Yeah.
I have friends that literally fund their entire lives off of that. Like they
Wow.
just do that, and then and that funds their whole like all the recording and production and all that stuff. And which is also that's another nice thing about sync. If sometimes you can work with producers, and because you're both writing it and you're both pitching it, you don't have to pay like full production costs, which
Mm.
because that's the thing. If you were paying the full production cost for every sync song you write, you would be
Yeah.
in the red, I would say.
Yeah.
but but that's the beautiful thing about making connections with these producer writers that are willing to go in with you and be like, okay, well then they'll take a bigger percentage of that cut when you get a license, which makes sense because they did all of the production work, but it helps you
Yeah.
kind of consistently get songs out without having to just lose thousands of dollars in the process. But so yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's totally possible and you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's
So
easy to
inspiring.
just be like, well, I'm just gonna do my artist thing and hope that it blows up. And a lot of artists just think, well, I'm gonna start releasing music, maybe, an EP a year or something, and then go on a tour and I'll be able to do this full time. But the more common story is it takes years to get to the point of like self-funding and bringing in significant revenue from music.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think too many times like artists tend to look at this as like I need to see something happen in the next 12 months where I can
right.
like recoup all my financial investments and everything. But usually it's not that case. Like it is a long-term
Uh-uh.
journey. So
It's a long game for sure. And I think, yeah, you have to have a lot of patience, and you have to be okay with hearing no a good amount of times, like,
Yeah.
and oop, just a quick street race happening. But I mean, because that used to, when I first moved here, and if I ever, my first few no's, whether it's from, anything, it like, it was so hard. And I was just like, okay, well then I am not supposed to do music. And this is it. And then in
Yeah.
reality, I was like, oh, that's just this one person. Like, you
Hmm.
can't put too much weight on what one person, whether, even if they're at a label and you think this is my end all be all, I'm putting the amount of times
Hmm.
I put all of my eggs in one basket for it to not work out is, I've done that many times. So I would encourage people not to put all of their eggs in one basket, even if you think this is going to go through, or you have one
Yeah.
person really interested in you and really pursuing you. And it's like, you're like, this is going to work out and this is going to be the thing. And then it falls through and you realize, oh, I literally completely counted on that. And now I have
Hmm.
nothing to fall back on, or, um,
Yeah.
and also not let that completely destroy your confidence
Yeah.
in your abilities or in your calling, to be like, okay, it's okay that that one person went another direction. That does not mean that this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, that I'm not
Yeah.
made, that God didn't create me this way. And, it's hard though. That's an unfortunate discipline that I feel like most artists have to learn, is how to not get destroyed when you are told no.
Yeah.
But it's possible,
Yeah.
and it takes a while. And like, too, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to do music but I don't want to tour, but I still want to make money, I think a lot of times, first of all, I definitely, like, I'm would love to get more into that area of my life, which I never really have before. But I want to start traveling and leading worship, but because I never had it, I was just like, all right, how do I make money not doing that? Because that's always what everyone says is the main way to make money, and it is a way for sure. But I hope that I'm an encouragement to people that there are ways that you can make money and have a career and not just have to be touring
Yeah.
24/7 too.
Yeah. That's good. Awesome. Well, speaking of, traveling more, you're actually headed to Kansas City for our worship songwriters retreat, happening September 12th through the 14th. So we're super excited to have you with us.
Yeah, I
And
can't wait.
one thing I realized in, yeah, one thing I realized, and our team realized in preparing and like planning for this retreat is we need more female songwriters in the industry. There's very
Yeah.
few. So yeah, I'm excited that you're able to like come and speak into the songwriters, worship leaders that will be coming. So if you're listening to this and you're maybe it's your first time hearing about it, or you've heard about it but you haven't really decided, hopefully hearing Shaylee's story and knowing that she'll be there will prompt you to and motivate you to apply. So if
Come
you're
be my friend.
if you're interested, head over to worshipsongwritersretreat.com and you can get all the information there and apply. And something that we just announced this past week is for everyone coming, we are actually giving you an NFT. So if you don't know what an NFT is, you can Google that. But it's something we're really like we haven't seen much or anybody in the Christian music industry do, like dabble into the NFT world. But we decided we're gonna do something very unique, and you'll have an exclusive NFT when you come, and you'll get access to some exclusive things throughout the year. So you can find out more about that as well. But Shaylee, before you go, can you tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you and what you're excited about?
Yeah. So I'm releasing a song a month ish. I say that, and who knows, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. We don't know. But I have two more songs that are unreleased. Oh, three, that will be coming out throughout this year. So I'm excited about that. And poor sweet cat, our A&R, if she she has dealt with so many of my questions. If you would listen to like the voice memos I have sent her, you would think I was manic. It's it's insane just deciding, do you release the whole EP? Do you do one song at a time? But we've decided to just kind of do a slow one at a time thing to let these songs kind of breathe and have a life of their own. And they're more in the worship realm, that they're very vertical lyrically. So I hope that they, bless the church and encourage people. And I'm excited for people to hear them. And yeah, that's pretty much what's happening the rest of this year. I also do I have some cover projects, and I have a band called Hardly and then one called Sugar Sad Eyes. We do like 90s covers and things, which is fun. So if you're interested in that world, they are
Cool.
they are there.
Yeah. And what's the best way for people to connect with you online or like on social media?
Instagram's definitely the easiest way for me, and it's Shaylee Simeone, but it's technically Shaylee Simeone. But if you Simeone is spelled someone with an I, Simeone. Um, so yeah, that's the best way to connect. I do have a website and Facebook as well, but I feel like that's the best way to stay up to date on things if you're
Right.
interested, or to just be friends.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to share with us on the podcast. There was a lot of great stuff, and I think even just on the encouragement side, but also on just the creative, like revenue, ideas that you shared. I think that's really
Yeah,
exciting for independent artists to hear about. So, yeah, thanks for sharing about your journey in it, and yeah, be sure to check out Shaylee's music on your favorite streaming platform and connect with her on Instagram. Thanks, Shaylee.
yeah. Thanks, Wisdom. See you later.